Good morning, UPBOptionMillionaires.com. It is Monday. It is March 16th, 2015. S&P 500 futures are up 0.6%. Last Monday, we were off to a great start as well. And in the following session, we pulled back. It was a rough week last week. We'll see if we can find some footing here. If you look at long-term trendline support, would be down at the 220 level here for the S&P 500 futures. Right now, we're bouncing at about 2040. And you look, is this just a song and dance before a pullback to support? We have the Fed coming out this week. Are they going to take away the patient from their policy statement? Will that help to send stocks to new record highs? Or are we going to pull back to this support level? Just something to keep an eye on. If we do pull back, I think it's going to coincide with what we've seen with the U.S. dollar. Would be a continuation of the rally. I wrote about this on Friday. If they do decide to indicate to the market they're going to raise interest rates, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, because if they do go back, start raising interest rates, the U.S. dollar is going to continue appreciating in value. If they don't, at some point they're going to lose credibility because obviously the economy is turning around a little bit. Jobs report came out great. Of course, not a lot of people are participating in the jobs market, but the unemployment rate fell, and jobs growth continues to be robust. So the U.S. dollar index could continue to rally. And it's coinciding with a collapse in the dollar. Euro, look at the euro just getting devalued this morning. It's actually getting a little bit of a bounce, 0.5%. I talked about it last week as well. The rallies for the market have been hand in hand with a pullback in the U.S. dollar because the strength starts to pick up for the U.S. dollar. Everybody starts to worry about how this is going to affect exports as they become more expensive overseas. So the euro is starting to bounce. A piece out, I believe, last week. Goldman Sachs talking about this cross hitting 82, which would be, another 2,300 pips from here, which is a pretty bold statement considering it's, it almost reminds me of crude oil back in June of last year. Everybody thought it was going to 160. So where were they when the dollar-euro cross was at 140? Now we've basically crashed. I mean, just look at the U.S. Dollar index since the summer. A massive rally. And then look at crude oil. We were hearing the same thing about crude oil up here. If you don't recall, last summer there was all sorts of strife in the Middle East. And everybody thought crude oil was going to go to 160, and it's done the exact opposite. So here we are. You can see crude oil now is plunging, just as I'm doing this video here, about 20 minutes before the market's going to open to new, fresh 6+ year lows. And you go back to a chart for the crude oil futures. And if you draw a trend line across, let me just draw a trend line. I put this chart up on StockTwits as well. You could take a look at it. But basically, long-term trend line support has been broken. You draw a trend line across. We've got two other spots, aside from where it started in 99, where we've hit support and we've bounced. Well, this time, came back up to it, and now we're collapsing. This could be a pullback to about 30 on crude oil. Let's look at some individual names for this week. I really like GoPro, but let's look at, let me just get off the editing tools here, and look at Google. This is a long-term 5-year monthly chart, and you can see this beautiful pattern that's emerging for Google. Almost came up to top side resistance, trendline resistance. Maybe we'll come back down, but here the 550 level has been so important for the stock, and I think once it does move out, we're going to see a really significant move to the upside for Google. Apple as well has been consolidating. It's been a tough nut to crack really the last couple weeks as the iWatch announcement came out after hitting record highs. Looks like it's in consolidation mode, much like it was towards the end of 2014. I don't know if you remember, it hit an all-time high of 119 on December 1st, 2019 in the early hours of the opening bell, and then it flash crashed. So we've been consolidating into the end of 2014, then rallied to new highs this year, and we're consolidating again, looking for a breakout to the upside. You can see the stock hit its lows on Thursday, recovered. I got some calls. It worked out. I thought it was going to head to about 126, 127. It looked so promising on Friday before the market kind of just took an absolute crap, so to speak. Let's look at GoPro, because GoPro is working its way off its lows. You pull up a chart for GoPro. The stock has been in an absolute tailspin. Is this just a little bit of a bounce before continued downside? I'm not so sure. And if you pull up, let me just pull up the editing tools again. If you pull up a trend line across Yeah, that one works good. Hello. That's why that's why I'm not an artist. But we're right at a level here that we just broke above that goes all the way back to the summer of last year. And I'm looking for a move back up to 45 and then up to this level here at about just over $50 a share for GoPro. Record short interest, something like 60% of the float is short. So just something to keep an eye on there. And then GoPro calls, I'm in for this week. I was in them last week. The stock was at 37.84 and had a great last 2 days of the trading session. You can see the low here at about 37.60 on Thursday. Had a great rally Friday, pulled back, but was really strong despite the weak S&P 500. Look at the SPY, was very weak on Friday. A lot of it could be blamed on the US dollar. There's a lot of different little headlines. Of course, every single headwind since the lows of the market in March 2009 has been a great buying opportunity. So seeing it this morning, S&P 500, again, up. Crude oil is lower. S&P 500 futures are up almost 0.6%. Something else to keep an eye on, the IWM, which last week was kind of telling you, you know what, this market really doesn't want to go down because the small caps were hanging in there. This 120 level, you can see it here on the 5-day chart. Every time we got down to this 120 level, it acted as some sort of a trampoline, finally getting us up to about 123.20 before we pulled back on Friday and then recovered almost all of those losses. You pull back from a long-term chart perspective, IWM, to me, looks like it's ready to continue to break out another $7 to the upside. You can see it came back to support, which was former resistance in the past, middle of 2014, start of 2014, and towards the end of 2014, before finally breaking out this year and looking for much higher prices. The NASDAQ was weaker last week as well. I was looking for a move down to support. We got pretty close. That 105.50, 105.30 area has been very key as far as support is concerned. There's a weekly chart, so look what we did last week. A nice move to the downside. If you look from a shorter term, this possibly putting in some sort of a bear flag here. We're pulling back. We're consolidating. I would look for long-term trendline support here at the 103.50 level. But again, just like with the S&P 500 ETF and S&P 500 futures, we've pulled back. We haven't pulled back all the way to support, but there is a distinct possibility that we could bounce from there. I brought up a chart on StockTwits and Twitter about the SPY and talking about it. Previous oversold areas have been a great buying opportunity. And this one goes back even further. I think the one I did on StockTwits and Twitter was a one-year chart. But look, each of the times we've been really oversold for the SPY, we've had some dramatic recoveries. Going back to September of 2013, look at the recoveries here that we're seeing each time we get pretty oversold. So this market doesn't like to be in oversold territory too long. Look at the one we had back in October and December. And here we are again. We're just bouncing out of it. So I'm looking for a move to the upside. That inverted flash crash high of 212.97 on the SPY in the middle of December. All right, UPBOptionMillionaires.com. So I'll see you in the chat room. The market is off to a good start this week. We have the Federal Reserve coming out on Wednesday. Are they going to be patient? Are they going to take it away? Are they going to be prudent? I wrote up a piece you can check out on the blog at OptionMillionaires.com on Friday for the Friday Focus. Everyone have a great trading session, a great week, and I'll see you in the chat room.